Well, welcome. Tonight we're going to meet one of the special people. People who not only stand up and say things should be different, they should be better, but volunteer to try and make them better. We have a candidate for a state position that's critical, going to talk to us about her views and her ideas. Why don't we start with an introduction?
Sure. So my name is Dashe Videira. I am a candidate for State Senate, Norfolk, Worcester, Middlesex District. I'm a wife, a mother of four. My background culturally is very diverse. My current married name is Portuguese. My mom is Portuguese. Some of the original settlers in Provincetown, but Irish, English, and French. And my dad is first generation here, born in Staten Island, Puerto Rican, and Costa Rican descent. And they definitely gave me a huge opportunity to truly live the American dream, that I would love to try to preserve the American dream to the best of my ability. Why I chose to run is, as I've had kids and they've gotten older and financial strains have come forward, I've really acknowledged the importance of getting involved with the community, being an advocate for what I believe our country needs, and having children and really seeing what I think is most important for them. It's having present parents and being involved in their life and allowing the opportunity to raise the kids that we see fit in an ever-changing world. The more that I believed I had an opportunity for change and for voice, I jumped right on in and said, let's do something about it.
Well, Dasha, I always start the show with the same question. I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
I think in this district, Milford is probably the most diverse community, and I think one of the reasons why Milford could vote for me is because I understand, with my own family's cultural backgrounds, what community was here, what community has come, what the community can work towards uniting and bringing together. And with the population size of Milford and the changes that they've had, I do think that there needs to be a candidate that can help articulate out what the citizens of Milford are in need of. And to do that, I do think that you need to have some culturally diverse lifestyles to better understand that all different walks of life have stories, but how do we move forward as a community to unite and really work together to build out a more promising future? And I would say that I am the strongest candidate, I think, for Milford to be that voice.
So now, if you get elected, you have a myriad of different choices for committees to want to serve on.
Yeah.
Which ones would you pick if you had the choice?
If I had the choice, my passion and my background, I think the best areas that I could serve would be in regards to education and health. And the main point of why I think those two would be the most feasible is because of me being a mom, having understandings of what education can be, and how a different perspective in education, I think, can help bring a better, promising future of the conversation of education in a diverse cultural district and state. And I think health-wise, as we've moved forward, there's been a lot of, in my opinion, more government choices versus parental choices or we the people choices, that there needs to be an advocate that can find some balanced conversations when we put things into legislation and laws.
What kinds of things would you like to see changes made in?
One of the things for education is I would love to see children outside more, ways for them to connect to nature with something as simple as a gardening approach of planting a seed and watching it grow. And I think as a community, education has gotten more fixed on complying and being in a restricted manner, that the kids have shown that the model method of the industrial era is no longer working, that what are some very basic principles that we could start implementing now. And I think gardening is a very simple, realistic thing that we can teach children as young as preschool and up. And I think the more physical movement that children will get throughout the day would help to offset a lot of their cooped up, rambunctious behavior. And the two aspects I think that can help serve is teaching children the importance of from seed to food and getting out in physical movement and allowing their flexibility to just run. If a child needs to run, sometimes that's very real, and creating classrooms that allow that opportunity no matter what age range they are.
It's been said that when I was in school, when we were there, and Paul Revere and I had this discussion, we were sent to school to be educated by our system.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like today some parents are sending their children to be raised and educated.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Well, as our mental health has increased, I think it's definitely highlighted. It is a wide spectrum on age on how people are affected on a day-to-day busy lifestyle. And, am I going to be able to go in and magically change somebody's lifestyle? No. But I do think that it requires some level of ownership on parents to find ways that they feel that they can support themselves while still, and this is emotionally, mentally, even spiritually, physically, find ways to support themselves without taxing what they're actually capable of doing in a realistic manner, and having the schools be more of a support system to work with parents on what their issues are, because the schools are not babysitters. The schools, I truly believe, teachers want to teach, and when we're dealing with an array of different types of behavioral issues amongst children, or maybe overstimulated children, or an opportunity where schools can just provide, again, babysitting sometimes can be a hard word, but parents do have to work, that they need a place for their kids to go. I think there needs to be more conversation between the schools and the parents, and really try to find some bridge, or at least work towards realistic goals that we know that the community might need, that offer an opportunity for us to hopefully get out of the schools being the parents and the education platform and the babysitters.
Well, we see it with the library.
Mm-hmm.
Because when school lets out Stacy, there's a flood of children that run to the library.
Yeah.
And it seems to work because they have homework, assignments, they have different areas that, some parents work till 5, 6 o'clock
Yeah.
at night. And you can't just put the burden on them saying, go home early every day.
Yeah. Parents can't necessarily just go home early every day. I'm very fortunate. I have an opportunity, that if I do need to go home, I have flexibility in my career, but not every parent has access to that. And I think after school, children do need services met, and a lot of those services can just be a place to do their homework, or a place to socialize, or a place to physically get out some energy, because being in the school classroom setting was too much for them, that the school day is extended. And I think many parents that work later are obligated in a way to find a place for their kids to stay, and it's just part of the culture that we're in right now. I will say that with, I think, some of the changes that could be offered to the educational system, it after school could look different, but someone has to be willing, I think, to advocate on the reality of the stress that parents are in. And it's not just parents raising kids these days. We have aunts, uncles, grandparents raising kids, and their energy could be much different than it was when they once had kids. That, let's start having those conversations of what a day in a kid's life could look like, that help to eliminate mental health, eliminate social emotional frustration, and try to create a platform that can hopefully grow with more positive outcomes.
Do you have any ideas of what we could do with after-school programs? Because it would help the parents and help the kids.
It is. I think if there was a way to bridge small business opportunities and, maybe it's a particular hobby or interest amongst one of the children, you find a way to merge the two. I would love to know more about what businesses could potentially offer assistance, because I do think that there's an opportunity with children to learn something outside of what would be traditionally in a school. But again, I think a lot of that has to go with understanding the demographic of the community, what kids are interested in, ways that we can get them utilizing their hands and their minds. And in my opinion, getting off of screens should be a goal of community members, that I would be more intrigued to merge the current community with educational needs and parent needs with childcare, but also allow an outlet for the kids to do something that they might enjoy or love.
Now, I was blessed with two of the most supportive parents you could ask for. But my father came from Portugal, had 4 years of school. He would come to every event I went to and have no idea what was going on. I mean, we'd go into the auditorium. Somebody tell my father, you should be there to support your son. He'd put on his suit, put on his hat, walk there and sit in the auditorium for as long as it took.
Wow.
I knew he didn't understand most of what was going on. But there was something special about the fact that he would be there.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how to bring the community and the schools together.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, truly, I think there's no quick fix. I think it's going to take time. I think parents, there is an obligation that comes with choosing to have children. And, there's an act that happens before, I guess, if you want to define choice of having children. But I will say, for me personally, my undergrad is in psychology. My graduate degree is in organizational leadership. I thought that I was going to climb up the corporate ladder, and I was blessed with finding out that I was expecting at, 23, 24 years old. And, I was battling mentally in my own head, like, this isn't the plan. This isn't what I wanted. I was climbing up this corporate ladder. I got my dream career and pathway, and the reality is that I really had to sit with terms of, oh my, how am I going to be a parent and still be a working woman? And as time went on, I worked in corporate. I loved where I was and what I did. I had an opportunity. My dream job was working at Bain & Company, and, I loved it. I reached those milestones. But when I got pregnant with my second child, my life taught me that I needed to reevaluate my priorities and maybe let go of some of the, not dreams, but expectations that I had put on myself, or the pressure I had put on myself. Because at the end of the day, as mental health is on the rise, I realized if I wasn't going to be present for my kids and I wasn't going to be there to support them when they needed that support more than ever, I have no idea if they ever will feel supported in life. That I had personally had to reevaluate my career to find a way to make money, to still be there for my kids, that I knew in the most precious years of their life there would be a support system that they could physically know, mom's going to be there, because in that reaction, it's something that I know that stays with them for the rest of their life.
It's interesting because I was fortunate that I could arrange my schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing I ever did is get into soccer. Coach them, because that meant we were together 4 nights a week, especially in the teenage years where they don't want anything to do with you.
Yep.
It guaranteed that I knew what kids they were hanging out with, how they were spending their time. But it's true, because those years, I'd love to say I did it just for my girls. I did it more for me than for them.
Yeah.
Because that time was so precious.
It is precious. I mean, they're only kids for short periods of a time. And as you get older in life and you start to reflect on your childhood, you know, you want to go to the fun, good, joyful memories of being a child. And, you know, a lot of people do inner child work is what they would call it, but it's a way for them to go back to that inner child and that joy that they're after. There's a good kids movie called Inside Out that I think does a phenomenal job helping a child understand their mixed emotions.
Their emotions?
Yes. And I think one of the greatest value is that as you get older in life, you know, a lot of adults struggle with their own emotions. And when you apply some time and energy to really understand who you are and, you know, what brings you joy, a lot of your memories of childlike behavior come forward. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think nobody really wants to grow up, but you have to grow up. And when you look in the eyes of a child, you see innocence and joy and limited stress. And as you get older in life, you learn what stress is and you learn how to, or you try to manage too much in a busy world, and you're just looking to be joyful.
And I'm a little bit ahead of you because I'm on the second round. I now have a granddaughter and a grandson. And I only get to see them 4 or 5 days a week, but my darling bride sees them 6 to 7. But it's unbelievable, the joy that these kids bring.
Yeah.
And the revenge.
And yes.
Because
yes.
now my daughter keeps debating the theory of carbo loading is bad. And I'm like, no, I can load them up with carbohydrates.
Yeah.
And then before the tighter peaks, drop them back at your house,
Yep,
and I run away.
That's your problem. Yeah. It's very true. Very true.
We talk about the school system. Schools are running into a unique challenge with all of the new immigrant children coming in.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yes. I think right now one of the biggest struggles that I am personally witnessing is that our communities were struggling prior to new demographics entering. And I guess the best analogy that I can always give is when people think of the Pilgrims coming here to meet with the Indians, and, you know, each side had a way of doing things, and it took a long time until things were kind of worked out. And, you know, to say that they were even worked out can be an understatement, but I think it requires time to understand what communities are coming here and what they need. And there's already a demographic of an American lifestyle that's plugged into that school, into that society, that, you know, there could be significant challenges that come. And I know if you do have children, let's say, in the classroom, and their lifestyle from prior to being in America was lived very differently, and they might even struggle to speak English, you know, that automatically will have an impact on the classroom setting for the other kids. And have we really figured out what that looks like yet? No, I think we're really far from even figuring out what that looks like. But I will say, when kids are involved, I'm here to truly honor a child's life and do the best that we can to provide the services and resources that are needed within a fiscally responsible way. And right now, I think we're really far from being fiscally responsible on that topic. And I think there's real challenges that have approached within the communities amongst the demographic in each town that has had a growing population of new families coming.
But how do you answer when people say we barely have enough money or we don't have enough money to take care of Americans? Now you get all these immigrants, foreigners, and I say immigrants, but unless your name is Squanto or something, we're all immigrants.
We are. It's a hard question to answer because there's no black and white answer. I think we have chosen some choices that have ripple effects that now we need to accept that there will be a transitional phase, and that could have years of longevity attached to it. To say that we're just going to pack everybody up and tell them that they need to leave, I think is also hard to say this is the decision made, because they've been here and they've been here for a while now. And, again, when there's kids involved, it makes it a little bit on the more challenging side of things. However, I know veterans that are struggling. I know community members that are significantly struggling. In Franklin, we just had a special election override that was this past June. And, within like 6 weeks, many people amongst the community had no idea that there was even a potential special election that was going to be voted on before our town council. And I think the biggest struggle is that the pitch was, this is for our kids' school and our kids' education, when in reality it was for the operating budget, and it was going to significantly impact the demographic in the town financially that was already struggling. And we do have a migrant hotel in Franklin, and their services are met. And how do you explain to the community that our education systems need more money and our town needs more money, and these people that are living in the community need more money, and you do have a demographic of people that came here that somehow are getting money to do XYZ, that it is a very emotional topic. It is a very frustrating topic, and I don't think there's any clear answer to say this is how we're going to solve it. I think compassion is at the heart of it, but I also think giving community members the tools that they need to make a non-emotional decision when it comes to finances is a very empowering opportunity. And the opportunity that we took was being the chair of the Vote No ballot committee to help articulate out to the community about the special election and the increased taxes. It helped to really highlight, hey, you know what? Why don't we create a calculator, and the calculator will allow the individual to plug in their property taxes with the automatic preset tax increases for the fiscal 25 budget for water, trash, sewer, and really ask the citizens of Franklin, can you afford this override? And the reality was, no, they can't. And the override itself, it was a $6.8 million operating budget override, and it was voted down and won by 236 votes. But if my husband, myself, and another community member didn't come forward, this would have passed, and a lot of seniors would have been struggling, that are already struggling and on fixed incomes, my family included, when we started plugging in the taxes originally at a $9.3 million override, because that was the first pitch. We're not in a position that we could afford that. So it was very apparent that if you can help to get the message out with the tools that are needed and allow the people to decide, can we afford that? I think that's probably one of the most empowering opportunities that we can give to community members right now, even pertaining to the migrant situation.
Well, we've been fortunate that we have not had to use profanity. So words like 2.5 override or
Yeah.
debt exclusion,
Yeah,
we've never used those in Milford. And I hope for a long time we won't. But you start looking at the challenges that people face. I think you're right that people don't understand, because when I was told that 50% of our high school kids qualify for free lunch, now everybody gets a free lunch,
yeah,
but you got to be on $34,000 or less, a family of 4. There's no room there,
yeah,
and you bring up the seniors, and that's one of the big things that we have to keep in mind here in Milford is the people who built our town. The reason we're here
yeah,
are these seniors.
yep,
And some of them are living on $18,000, $20,000 a year.
yep,
So, if I want a cup of coffee, I can go spend my $2, $3 on a cup of coffee because I earned it. It's my money. But if I'm going to spend your money, I got to think about it 3 times harder.
yeah, yeah.
When we think about the immigrants that come into the town, what is your feeling? Challenge or a blessing?
It has happened, and I pray that it can be a blessing. I think right now, in order to get a blessing, we have a lot of questions that need answers. And one of the struggles that I have seen just in Franklin alone is, are our elected officials helping to communicate out to the community about this new demographic that's come? And what this could look like, and what we've concluded is the answer is no. And I think that's where people get really frustrated because, again, people are financially struggling. And then when you say, oh, this is the newness that has entered your town, you kind of just have to deal with it. And then you get no answers. And then people's feelings and emotions start to circulate. I think problems can happen. And there is a lack of transparency that I believe is within my own town with elected officials, but within the state Senate district. And I truly believe holding a position of this nature requires you to do more public engagement and helping to find a way to harmonize. No, I'm not going to blame anybody for why they're here. They're here. But how can we create a harmonized environment so we can at least be communicative out to the people in the community in a way where hopefully it can offer some hope and it can be a blessing. Whereas right now, I think there's such a disconnect where, you know, even myself, you have to message the town administrator and, you know, the town council and ask questions over and over and over again. And, you know, they just, in my opinion, in Franklin, make it seem like it's no big deal and everything's fine, when in reality, you can see exactly what's happening, and financially, certain demographics are being taken care of where there's community members in our town that are significantly struggling. And how do you fix that problem? Lack of transparency is not helping the situation. And I think there needs to be an opportunity to create some kind of harmony amongst the reality that we're in within the community and try to find bridges or create bridges that allow us to coexist.
I think you've hit on it because Milford is, in my heart, a special town. But we've gone through the transition of having an Irish population who was followed by an Italian population.
Yep.
And then the Portuguese population.
Yep.
And because we had Portuguese, then the Brazilians came in.
Yep.
Every one of them, and now Ecuadorians, Guatemalans, and 99% of us, and I say us because my parents came to this country looking for a better life for the family.
Sure.
99% do. It gets me annoyed when people focus on the 1% that aren't nice people.
Yeah. I mean, it happens. It's in every culture. There's going to be nice people and not nice people. I mean, just in a kid's classroom, you're going to have nice people and not nice people. It's a part of life. But again, I think any mixture of any culture, it requires one to understand the culture and then try to work to build a bridge instead of isolating this culture over here because I'm over here. This is my way of doing it. You do it this way. It's really understanding people's cultural differences and trying to find ways that we can unite together and know at the core, I truly believe that people want to be good, and I truly believe that people want to do the right thing. What is the right thing? I don't know, because what could be right for me could be wrong for you. And how do we just, again, create those platforms to have the conversations to get people to understand each other instead of keeping it so polarized, and then you think of the negative and that's just what you have circulating in your head, and now it's mislabeled a whole demographic of people. I just don't think that's right.
But what can you do at a state level? You cannot control immigration.
No.
I mean, as I said, you can't decide we're going to deport all the illegal immigrants to Rhode Island.
Nope.
That just doesn't work.
No.
What can we do to make the transition better?
Well, I think this particular state Senate seat is 11 towns and cities, and one of the best things that I could try to do is to really work with each one of those 11 towns to really understand what are some of the challenges that they're having within the schools, within the communities, within transportation, funding, all of that, and figure out what would help to create a more balanced environment. And, you know, maybe one of the examples that I was thinking of is in the hotel in Franklin, it seems that majority of the demographic over there is Haitian. And I know for a fact that the Franklin population is very unaware on Haitian culture. And maybe it's one of those things that we could do something that is more inviting, that allows them to feel included, but also helps to open up a doorway within the community to understand that a new culture has come forward. I've also learned that in studying other cultures, 50% of the Haitian culture is actually Catholic. That, is there a way that we can help make them feel safer, knowing that if 50% of the community is Catholic, is there an opportunity to bring them a mass? Are we able to do things within the parameters of what limitations we may have, but again, with the core front goal of creating some balance and bridges so we can understand different culture, but also work within our own American culture to know that a whole nother demographic has arrived here, and it's going to take time to understand their way of living as well, too.
Well, it's interesting because at St. Mary's here in Milford, we offer a Portuguese Mass, a Spanish Mass, and it brings the communities together more.
Yeah, it will. If you can match somebody in their language, it offers a way of comfort. And I think if we can find ways to offer comfort in a true understanding of what they may need culturally, I think it can offer a bridge because people want to feel safe in their community. And one of the best ways to do that is as Americans, and all of us being immigrants to a degree, maybe this is an opportunity for us to do some good service work while still making sure that they're learning an American lifestyle.
Now, you mentioned small business participation. What are your ideas?
So my parents, I come from a small business family. My dad, going back to that American dream, he grew up in a not so great area in Staten Island and had a wonderful mentor. And his mentor gave him the opportunity to a trade to be a locksmith. And when I came into the picture, my parents, again, not the greatest area, living in Staten Island, and my dad was determined that he was going to get out. And, for a while, he would commute from New York all the way to Foxborough, Massachusetts, to come and find a way to he got a job, sleep on someone's couch, a coworker, work Monday through Friday, get back in the car, drive all the way to Staten Island until he could afford enough money to be able to move my mom and I out here. And he took on a job that was in Randolph, and it worked out great until he saw an opportunity for that American dream to open up his own business. And my parents have been in their own business for well over 30 years now. They've been through many recessions. They have, been through a lot of employees, but at the core front, that independence of the value of owning something yourself is so real. And him being a first generation American really only helped to highlight how liberating it was that he could do something for himself and he could make his own money and he could provide for his family, and nobody was going to tell him what to do kind of feel. And as we've gone on, I just constantly see these small businesses significantly struggling, and it breaks my heart because I think it is the backbone of America, is to help encourage small businesses to grow and to thrive. And I think there's opportunities where we could work to put in legislation that would help to engage in and promote small business opportunities and help to, even with kids out of school, it might not be for them to go straight to college. They might have a trade opportunity like my dad that allows them to get right into a trade to help open up a business. One of the things that I think that could also help is that if we were giving some financial opportunities inside the schools, so then that way these kids can learn how to really budget their finances appropriately, and again give them opportunities to have an entrepreneurial type mindset, which I think can coexist between the education platform, what kids need, and still give an opportunity for them to dream that American dream. And one of the nonprofits that I sit on as a board member is called the Maximum Impact Foundation, and the whole foundation is really to help create ways to give kids in the path of small business mindset, entrepreneurial skills, and give them an opportunity and almost a roadmap to help them create something and expand on something. And I think if we can get behind, again, that bridge collaboration mindset of how can we help kids be encouraged to open up small businesses at a legislation aspect to reduce the burdens that come on small businesses is huge. I think it would be huge.
Well, we're taking a step in Milford considering adding in a comprehensive high school.
Yes.
So we have a trade school,
Yep.
but it's become painfully aware to many of us that you have to be in the top 20% of the class academically to qualify. And I think of people like my father, who, if you put him in an organic chemistry class, he wouldn't have done well.
Yeah.
Give the man a tool.
Yeah.
He was an artist.
Yeah.
And too many of the kids aren't getting those opportunities
No.
because they're not performing at the top academic rate.
No. I was not one of those kids. So my parents were really, they blessed me with a huge opportunity to be able to go to Catholic middle school and Catholic high school. And I'm tremendously thankful for the foundation that they were able to give me. I'm also part of a generation when, you know, the Education Reform Act and everything was going, that I was in Foxborough at that time. They were going through massive redistricting. So 4 kids in 4 different schools was driving my parents nuts. So part of their decision to help us go to private education was to make their day-to-day life easier. They worked in Norwood. I went to St. Catherine's in Norwood, and then I went to Bishop Fian in Attleboro. But going to Attleboro at Bishop Fian, I was not the top, 20% of my graduating class. I was probably the bottom 20% of my graduating class, to be honest. And none of that made me dumb, or not smart or unwise. I just had different learning styles that I think needed to be nurtured. And standardized testing was hard for me. However, if you put me in a room with people to engage with and build something or grow something or get creative and, give me a stack of paper and, pencils and glue sticks, I would make something. So it helps me really identify the true needs of even myself and my own education. Is I think the expectation that you have to be as the top 20% of your class, in many ways kind of sets this tone that if you're not in the top 20% of your class,
It's a bad thing.
It's a bad thing. And I don't agree with that at all. And living the life that I live, where I think of where I am right now, I never in a million years ever would have predicted that I'd be running for state senate. But some things have happened in my life that have only helped to affirm that there is empowerment in taking leadership roles and doing something about it. And if I was in the belief system that I didn't graduate in the top 20% of my class and I'm not smart enough to do that, I wouldn't be sitting here today. So I definitely think there needs to be more opportunities for kids to feel seen and heard in school, to know that there's more than a career path than just going to college. There's more than a career path to say, well, we can't give you a trade unless you're in the top 20% of the class. I think it's really figuring out, what gets a kid going early on in life, and then creating a system and a model that they can build off of that, where they're getting confidence and they're doing something that they love at the end of the day.
Well, you also mentioned the balance between what the state controls and personal rights.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel we're doing a good job?
I do not. I do not. Actually, we lived in Franklin. I moved in Franklin in 2010. I had my oldest son in 2011. I have 4 beautiful kids. He was the beginning of me kind of thinking outside of the box. And we moved to Franklin for the school systems. We had lived in Sharon for a little while because my husband and I got into a couple of live-in flips where we would buy houses and renovate them. And when we moved back into Franklin in 2014, it was primarily because we had just spent all this money on the Franklin High School. It was beautiful. I was like, this is great. This is where the kids can go. But in our transitional shift between living in Franklin, living in Sharon, moving back to Franklin, I ended up being at home with the kids. I started being more present with the kids. We started cooking and gardening, and it turned into a path of actually us homeschooling the kids. And my daughter had the opportunity to go to the first farm and forest preschool in Massachusetts at Tangerini Farms, and watching a child at 3, 4, 5, 6 years old being connected out in nature and just having the experience of her life because she gets to be free or feel alive was such a great opportunity for me to see just a different perspective of how kids can really thrive if they're provided the right tools and in the right environment, that I ended up homeschooling by choice the kids, leading a couple of co-ops, working with a bunch of micro schools in the state, and really just helping to create children in environments that allow them to really thrive organically with something that they love and they can prosper into. And when I think of my kids today, they all go to school full time. I followed in my parents' footsteps and they go to a private Catholic school. But the value that I've witnessed is when they transitioned into school, one of the greatest gifts that I got were from their teachers telling me what beautiful children they are and what great leadership skills they have, because they can come in and they can take the initiative while still being mindful of their peers. And a lot of kids today really struggle with taking leadership stances or voicing their opinions. And, when someone asks me, why are your kids like that? And it's like, well, I believe I've advocated for them appropriately based off of what they've shown me that they need, and I've worked to create an environment that allows them to thrive like that. However, as time has gone on and why I chose to run for state senate, my opponent, I believe, truly at her core thinks that children and education come down to what the government believes is right and just. And I think my lived experience validates that if I was to go based off of her ideas, my kids emotionally, mentally, and physically would be struggling. And I think the more that you can allow a parent to understand their child and advocate for what their kid needs, you can see some really glorious things that happen and, in my opinion, set a child up for success versus for failure.
But how do you deal with some of the core necessities? We've had a lot of debate about to vaccinate or not to vaccinate.
Well, that one's a tough one because, originally I always believed, this is what you do and this is what you're supposed to do, question nothing. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. And when I had my daughter, who's my second child, she was really the pivotal shift for me to start thinking outside of the box, because she did have some adverse reactions, and it was enough for me to start asking some questions. And the more questions that I was asking, the more I realized that there was frustration that was coming based off of the questions that I was asking. And the more questions that I would ask, the more frustration would grow. And I started realizing and kind of going a little bit further on rabbit holes of what my kids might need or what could be happening and how did this happen. And, I ended up finding out that my whole family has genetic mutations, and those genetic mutations put our family at risk to do certain things. And, all of that stuff happened before COVID. And I'm grateful to all of it, because when COVID happened and I saw what was going on in the country, never mind in my own state, I was jaw to the floor, because I realized in my own lived experience, some things that might work for some doesn't work for others. And I'm witnessing a community of people that are genuinely scared, genuinely want their life to go back to the way it once was. And they just said yes to a lot of things. And as time has gone on, some of those yeses have left consequences, choices, ripple effects. And if anything, for me, it helped to confirm that what works for one doesn't necessarily work for all. And if we're passing legislation within those last 6 or so years since COVID that could be putting us in a box or a category of force and removing choice, it gets dangerous.
I think people are scared both ways.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, in Milford, we had an outbreak of TB. outbreak, 2, 3 patients. But,
Sure, sure.
we ended up budgeting to have visiting nurses go and visit people and make sure they took their medicine. We had a lot of people who were upset that we were spending all this money on people coming to Milford. And I got annoyed because I said, really? Did your child go to school? And they said, yes. I said, you want him sitting or her sitting next to somebody with TB?
Yeah, yeah,
So a lot of times the appearances aren't necessarily reality.
right.
We can say and pretend that we're doing it for the better health and the goodness of these new kids coming to town. At the end of the day, it's my grandkids.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm doing it not only for the right reason,
Yep.
but for the reason that I'm scared to death that I don't want to expose my children.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the tough part right now is because, again, what works for one doesn't necessarily work for all. And it goes back, I think, in a similar analogy, I would put it in with, we have new demographics of people that are coming to our communities. And, they have a way of living, they have a way of being, and so do we. And, what works for one doesn't work for all. And it's going to take some time, I think, to understand people and their stories and lived experiences, to have compassion that, again, what works for one might not work for all. And that can bother someone significantly. But when we become hyper-focused on controlling other people, that's when it starts to get very problematic, because are we hearing the community? Are we hearing what's somebody's story is? Or are we saying, well, that might be your story, but I still need you to do X, Y, Z because this is what the law is. And, if somebody has to wager and say, well, if I was to do that, I'd be putting my family at risk. I think people are going to, I would hope, try to stand up and advocate for what they need. And I think at the core, that's really what COVID helped teach me, was that if people need certain things, they need to help have safe places to advocate for what they need without the fear of force or control or being scrutinized because what they might need or say is not what the majority might want or say. So I think it's a tough topic.
I think it's tough. The minute you start talking about people's individual rights, I don't know that there ever is a right or wrong decision.
Yeah.
We've certainly gone through it since Roe v. Wade was overturned.
Yep.
And people are passionate about both sides of the argument.
They are. And, I truly believe that conception starts at birth. And, to me, that's life. That said, I have people near and dear to me in my life that have chose other options, and who am I to say that they were wrong? I mean, that was their choice. The choice is available to them, and that's what they believed was best. And it's not my job to control their choice. And I think this is where it gets challenging, because at the end of the day, I'm always going to be an advocate for choice. Now, my choice was, I'm choosing to believe that life starts at conception.
Well, many people have said our new pope is going to save the church from itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really happy when he came out and said, when I meet our Father, who am I to challenge his creations? They were talking about gay versus straight.
Yep.
And I sat there and I said, he's right. I mean, I'm not gay. I don't want to be gay.
Right.
But I have a lot of gay friends.
Yeah.
And it's simple. Don't try and make me gay. I won't try and make you
Yeah.
straight.
Yep.
And we'll see if we like each other as people.
As people. And again, like, what works for one doesn't work for all. And I'm not here ever to judge anyone. I believe that is God's job to do. And I must say I'm very thankful to my parents. They raised me with a moral compass, and I always lead with that before I make any decisions. I also remind myself that my decisions might not be the same as somebody else's decisions. And as a believer, I will say that by truly listening to other people, you start to respect their walk of life, the choices that they chose to make, maybe with information that they had or information that they didn't have. But I'm not here to judge them in any way. And at the core front, I would like government to stay out of my life as much as possible. And who am I to say, what those choices are? I just am looking for choice options.
Mental health is a big issue.
It is.
How do we you can't fix it.
No.
It's not like we're going to send a memo saying nobody will suffer from mental
Ever again.
health. But what steps do you take?
Well, I think the American lifestyle is very stressed, overworked, overran, over communicative. I mean, we have something pinging us 24/7. And, we live such busy lives that we want the information because we're like, oh, I don't want to miss anything. I need everything. And that fear of missing out is very real. But if your goal is to better yourself, something that I've learned in my own journey of personal development is with free will comes a choice. And that choice is to choose to be better. And it's sometimes really hard to choose to be better. And it is an individual obstacle that everybody faces every day in how they want to handle any option that comes their way. There's a choice. And do I believe that we're going to solve mental health tomorrow? No. Do I believe that we can work to create platforms and communities that allow people to, yes, offer self-expression, but with the goal of feeling joyful and being better, like truly better? I think over time, yes, we can see a change in society and their mental health. But, that choice starts with, how do you wake up in the morning? The first time that you wake up in the morning, do you make the bed? Do you instantly pick up your phone that's right next to your bedside and check your email? Who's may have contacted you, is the first thing you do.
You got to make the bed. Catholic guilt
Yeah.
was driven
Catholic
into
guilt
me.
is so real. Yeah.
I don't
funny.
think I'm supposed to say that, but
No, but that's so funny. You're safe. But it is real. I mean, something as simple as making the bed, I know sounds ludicrous, but it's an accomplishment. And right now, I think for kids, they need to feel accomplished in their day. So, what is a routine-based accomplishment that you can set up for the kids that they can go to when they're having an off day? If they're having an off day as an adult, let's say, you might feel so accomplished that you made your bed that morning. And then at the end of the day, when you go back into your bedroom to go to sleep, you're like, that looks like a nice, comfortable, freshly made bed. It kind of just helps to reset the tone a little bit. So, but that's a choice. There's a lot of people that were not drilled in Catholic guilt, to make their bed. But, making their bed might have been something that their parent or caregiver honestly mentally was not even able to even show them to do. That I think if we can find little tiny milestones with kids and adults, because I think it's a two-part system here, putting down the phone might be a real choice that someone needs to make to mentally do better.
now you've talked, and on your website, you talk about making a safe community.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Ooh, safety's a tough one right now because, again, the migrant situation has definitely proposed some wearisome feelings amongst community members to feel safe. So that's a real thing for people. I think also, too, the polarized viewpoints in the world have made it hard to even feel safe going home because your neighbor has extremely opposing views and looks at you as if you're like the spawn of Satan because you think differently than them. So what does safe communities really mean? I think it starts with, at the core front, listening and realizing that everybody is going through their own mini battle that could be part of a bigger battle every day. And I think the more interconnected in-person experiences that we have, you start to get back to the normalcy of we are just people genuinely doing the best that we can. And sometimes that comes with just a hi and a wave and an acknowledgement that this is where we are. But how can we create that playing field that allows us to feel safe, to express who we are wholeheartedly, even though we may have different views, and then still leave there without feeling as if we're going to be castorized or judged and then pushed in another corner because we think differently than them. So we need to isolate and stay away from them. So given the way the political platform is right now, when I say make safe communities, kids can have fun on the streets and play without thinking, I can't play with you because my parent thinks differently than your parent thinks. Getting neighbors to coexist again. I mean, some of the topics that have come forward have really created such division on one street that, this is just how someone goes to sleep every night, where you have to wake up and think about that all over again. It's a community effort, but I really do believe that we have an opportunity to do that, and it's going to be a lot of groundwork. But safe community is feeling based, it's physically, it's emotionally, and it's mentally.
I think people have to just accept that people are people. When they talk about the crimes by these immigrants, okay, so 99% of the people that immigrated are here for, like, our parents, who came for a better life for their family. They put their heads down, they work. 1% aren't so nice.
Sure.
But that's no different from the people who are already here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd love to say 100% of the Americans who were born and raised here don't commit any crimes.
I'd say lie.
I'd love to be young, thin, and have hair.
Yeah.
Either one doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think, as you say, the first step is understanding and listening. Well, unfortunately, I have to ask a question.
That's okay.
Dashe, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
I think you should vote for me because I truly believe that I can be a voice of compassion with great listening skills to help deliver change for a more balanced society at the State House.
Well, thank you. And thank you especially for being one of the people who just doesn't say it can be better, who says it can be better and I'm willing to work to make it better.
Wholeheartedly.
And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Thanks for joining us. I've made a commitment that I'll never ask you as a viewer to vote for any specific candidate, but every time I get a chance, I'll beg you to get out and vote. Get to know the candidates, pick one, and vote. Good night, all.